guys, hi, welcome back once again. My name is Vaishali, and having learned quite a few things from, through, and from within human interactions, and having pursued and completed my master's in business administration and in clinical psychology, I today wish to present something unfiltered. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not gone under the process of editing, particularly in this regards with the usage of the editing tool. Parts of it have been edited, and yet it's unfiltered, which means that the essence of it, the essence of what I'm trying to convey for us to be able to self-reflect is unfiltered. So I've taken up this particular art activity along with others in one of my workplaces that I'm associated with as a counselor and as a therapist in order to open up certain windows to be able to self-reflect with regards to certain aspects of ourselves that present at that point in time through the process and the course of that activity, which then also required me and others to be mindfully present, to be mindfully attuned, to be mindfully observant, to be mindfully reflective. Through the course of this process of thinking about an artwork and then executing it onto the paper, then actually putting it on paper, essentially working on it and not just thinking about it, and then being able to tear it and to shred it into pieces, to experiencing whatever was happening at that point in time, whether pleasant or whether unpleasant, without directly moving into the future to think as to what it could or can look like, which is actually not running into the future by avoiding the present, but actually sitting with the reality, the physical reality, the somatic reality, the emotional reality, the mental reality, and experiencing that, and not just experiencing that, but also being able to verbalize it as that's happening, even when it's unpleasant, actually helps me understand myself a little better, actually helps me understand my own complexities a little better, actually even to some degree helps me understand that it is only when I'm complex that to some degree I can be interesting as well. And it helps me see parts of myself or the contrasting parts of myself that makes my experiences a little more interesting, a little more insightful as well. Also being able to give it words, to be able to verbalize it, to be able to communicate it, helps me give it a certain direction. Because as a few psychologists would say, that only when you can name it, especially the emotions, will you be in charge of them to be able to tame them. So only when you can name them, can you tame them. And that is when our emotions, especially the bigger ones, especially the overwhelming ones, especially the ones that feel unpleasant, do not then feel so overwhelming, because we know that we've been able to communicate them, to give them a certain reference point from which we can begin to untangle, detangle, and understand them as well. So this was one of the arts that I had drawn with regards to connecting lines for 10 seconds, starting from one point and closing my eyes and just moving the pen around, and something of this nature came up, after which it was required to color it in whichever order that we wanted to color it. Now coloring that required 2 hours at least on my part, and of course I'll mention over here that I was wanting to do it well, which looked aesthetically pleasing. Thankfully, I realized that a part of me that at one point in time might have wanted to do it perfectly was not there. So perfectionism had gone out to make space for doing it well and which looked aesthetically pleasing to me. Now, the other part of this is what we are attempting to do today is to destroy this thing by scratching it out completely with a black marker pen, or spoiling it completely, and then kind of tearing it apart. After we have torn it apart, it will be to rejoin the same pieces in a different way to again kind of try and make it look aesthetically pleasing, to kind of make it look good enough. So that's the idea. My name has also been written over here, and the idea is to understand attachment to things that we get attached to the things that we have created, to the life that we have created, to the crafts that we have created. We kind of get attached to those because a lot of effort has been put into it, a lot of merit has gone into it, a lot of thought process has gone into it. And we, in a way, to some degree, feel proud. I feel very proud of this thing that I've done. And the time has come to distance myself from it, or to detangle from it, or detach from it. And it's not easy, it's painful, but the idea is to get comfortable enough, not too comfortable, but comfortable enough with sitting with the pain, with sitting with the process of going through the pain, and yet being able to realize that after it's torn and shred into smaller pieces, it can be rebuilt again. It will never look the same again, it will never be the same again, but it can be created into a different craft, into a different creation, and into a different thought process, into a different life altogether. So it starts here, and it is very uncomfortable right now. Even to think of squibbling it down, and it doesn't feel good. There is a part of me that is resisting it and saying, I think it's enough काफी कर दिया, खराब करने का काम, इतना अच्छा बनाया था. Don't do it all the more. But the thing is, the idea psychologically here is that whatever we resist, I'm feeling a lot of resistance in my body. I'm feeling it over here on my chest, in my neck. I'm breathing a little harder, holding my breath. So the idea is to recognize that wherever you feel the resistance in your body, wherever you feel the constraint or the holding back in your body, so you kind of feel that. And over here I'm also realizing that I don't want to damage it so much that it kind of looks too messy, and that is why the lines are also kind of going in one direction. So even if I want to spoil it, I still want it to look decent enough, which is my unconscious that is getting revealed to me over here. And I need to get good or a little more comfortable with spoiling it a little more. My name has to go. Okay, after the name went, it felt a little easier. Yeah, the name's gone. It's just a craft now. Okay. It's a little easier. It was difficult in the beginning. Slightly easier, not saying that it's completely okay. But yes, we try to avoid our discomforts, but that is where, when we start resisting it a lot and not taking the effort to redo things, is the place where whatever we resist keeps persisting. And we need to go beyond our resistance is the idea. Okay, so my name's Ron, and it kind of looks like this. Now the idea is to shred it into pieces completely. This feels difficult. And despite it being spoiled, I don't want to throw it. No. Where do I feel it in my body? I feel it a little here, because any kind of discomfort, any kind of a pain that we're trying to resist will always present itself in the body. So the idea is also to notice where you start feeling that discomfort, the emotional discomfort, the psychological emotional discomfort that you're feeling registers in the body. So the idea is to even recognize those parts of the body, because it kind of gives you an understanding that that is where some kind of emotions you hold back, or some kind of emotions you repress and store. And that is where somatic healing or body healing comes into the picture. Once you start to recognize where you hold the emotions, or where you suppress them, or where you feel the resistance, is the place where you need to let it go from, is the place you need to tap it out from your body, to hum it out from your body, to do certain other things with regards to either chanting something or lying down with your legs raised high, to kind of move it out of your body or even to share it with others. Here, I also got a chance to reflect, or rather, we also got a chance to reflect and to gather a little more understanding and insight that whatever emotions we feel, for feelings are our sensory aspects connected to our biological senses, they kind of register more in some parts of the body. We feel them a little more in certain areas, in certain parts of the body. And generally, if we pay a little attention, it is kind of noticed that the unpleasant ones, the so-called negative ones, intentionally using the word so-called. So once again, the so-called negative ones makes certain parts of the body a little more tighter, feel a little more tighter, a little more restricted, which is where our breathing also gets a little shallow, because that is essentially where parts of our body are going into the flight, fight, or freeze response. Rather, fight, flight, freeze reaction, essentially the survival reactions. While as the pleasant ones, the so-called positive ones, makes us feel a little more expanded, gets our muscles to be a little more relaxed, because they are breathing, our body is breathing a lot easier, in a more relaxed way, in a more wholesome way. Our body is breathing at ease, which in fact is the absence of dis-ease. So if we take notice of that, if we become mindful of that, if we observe that, we'll be able to figure out for ourselves as to where essentially we hold our unpleasantness. Which parts of the body hold the harder emotions? In which parts of the body those emotions become our storehouse if they are not processed, if they are not shaken off, if they are not tapped out of the body, if they are not hummed out of the body, if they are not moved out of those parts of the body, they become a storehouse for those emotions. And over a period of time, if they are not processed, if they are not released only after processing, they get accumulated, they get piled on, which leads to something chronic. Most often than not, chronic inflammation, which happens over a period of time to then become a chronic disease. Because we've not learned to release it out of the system, to move it out of the system, or to ease it out of the system or even within the system, so that it's not stuck at one point or two places. But more often than not, many a times we've not even noticed, we've not even paid attention, we've not even attuned to our own selves, to our own bodies, to begin to understand, to begin to take notice as to where exactly we store certain emotions. What are the places and spaces within our own bodies wherein certain emotions are felt very deeply, in a very constricted way, in a very tight-knotted way? And unless we learn to recognize those tight knots, unless we learn to attune with our own bodies, to be able to see them, it's quite difficult to acknowledge them as well. And if it's difficult to acknowledge them, it's quite difficult to understand them. And if it's difficult to understand them, it's difficult to process them. And if it's difficult to process, then it's difficult to let go of them as well. So such kind of activities can also enable us get more attuned to our own bodies, to our own sensations, to our own feelings, to help us understand, to help us realize where exactly, in what situations, in what circumstances, in what interactions do we feel that tightness, do we feel that constriction, so that we learn to listen to our bodies. Because if we do not, like Dr. Bessel van der Kolk would say, the body keeps the score, and it keeps the score for a lifetime and will show up as inflammation, as chronic disease, as some kind of an ailment, as some kind of a pain, if you do not learn to tune into it, if you do not learn to pay attention to it, if you do not learn to listen to it, to then know what it's trying to tell you. And most of us, at least in my understanding to a large degree, have become quite insensitive towards our own senses. We have been trained in to be more insensitive, to be less attuned, not just with our own senses, but with others' senses as well. Which is why I think that Carl Jung had said that the human mind gravitates or probably even swings from being sensible to being nonsensical, from sense to nonsense. And through this activity, what I at least realized was that it's better to be a little sensible with regards to our own senses rather than behaving and acting out in nonsensical ways. And I would also now want somebody else to help me pair these things, because most of the times we also realize that the idea of us is that we are social creatures, and there are other people who are interacting with us on a daily basis, and they kind of impact our emotional and our psychological state, even our physical state. So I would want somebody else to help me destroy this, because we also have the tendency as social creatures to blame others for what we do not feel good about. And I would like to experience the same thing, that if somebody else destroys the work that I have done, how does it feel? Does it register differently, or does it still feel the same when I am destroying it myself, to recreate it differently? Can somebody else help me destroy this? Whoa! Easy. Right now I'm not liking the person who is doing the tearing job. Just be a little gentle, please. It doesn't feel good.
Distraction is never gentle.
Yeah, but now the pain is harder, because somebody else is also destroying while I'm destroying the same thing. Will somebody else like to participate? मैं देखना चाहती हूँ मेरे मन से कुछ गालियाँ भी निकलती हैं क्या? कितने प्यार से फाड़ा जा रहा है. Will somebody else want to destroy it with him? Any other participant? I know. जिसको आना है. We are standing up. Like another योद्धा. Like चलो मैं भी फाड़ता हूँ. मैं भी destroy करता हूँ. Okay. The standing up felt a little more harder, because it's like चला दिखाता हूँ कैसे फाड़ा जाता है, तुम्हारे काम को डिस्ट्रॉय कैसे किया जाता है. It hurts more when somebody else does it with you. That's the honest reality, and that is why we have the tendency to blame others. Oh my God, that was brutal. That felt mean when you took it like that. It was like, yeah, I enjoy destroying your work. That actually felt mean. So right now you are a pretty mean person today. Right now. You'll not be a mean person all the time, but right now you feel like a mean person. Okay. Last time is mine feels better than somebody else tearing it. Slightly better, because I still feel that I'm a very bit in control of what I'm tearing. When somebody else does it, it feels like that it's completely out of your control. That's the feeling that you get. So recognizing that also is pretty important. Okay. So in my body I felt it in my throat, in my body I felt it in my chest, and my that felt disrespectful when I was doing it like this. So in my body I feel it in my back, and with regards to this I kind of understand that most of the times whatever emotional burden that I'm feeling kind of gets stored in my chest, in my neck and my back area. And when somebody else does it, even when you want them to do a party to it, it doesn't feel good. And I can call somebody a mean person right now, not always, right now, because of the way the thing was taken up. Now let's recreate the same thing. Now recreating it feels a little better. It's a little relieving to think, okay, even if I have destroyed it, it still can be created anew. It will not look the same. It will have some cracks, it will have some patches, but it can still be joined. It can still be made into a new artwork. And that is the exercise that we'll be taking up. What we are trying to do is, or at least the part of me that at times can behave like a control freak, is I'm trying to have a proper structure. I'm trying to think of one particular thing, like a flower, or what should we create out of this. So maybe a tree or an animal or something. So I was having other people's opinion also as to create to it. That's my control freak aspect, that it wants to keep things in control, which at times comes out. And then somebody beautifully suggested over here that we can do random placement of these little pieces and then see as to what they think of the image that comes up for them, or what is their interpretation of the image, which is kind of a little random, which is exciting but a little scary for me because it doesn't feel in control. So that is another aspect of myself that I recognize through this that comes up. And there's a part of me that is still wanting to be in control, so maybe we can pick up both the things to satisfy the control freak part of me, and then also have some pieces which can be placed randomly, so both the activities are done. And both the parts of me, the one that is a little excited about being random and then being like leaving it open for discussion as to what everybody thinks about it, so that can be done, and the other is satisfying the control freak part of me. So if you actually listen, and not just hear, but actually listen to the content that was being played out, you would also notice that I've mentioned that there are parts of me that at times can behave like a control freak, that does not like being out of control, that does not like things happening in random manners, wherein there is less a sense of predictability. You'll also notice that I mentioned that there's a part of me which, when it takes care of the control freak aspect of me, gives permission to the control freak aspect of me that it can be in charge, that it can be in control, that it is allowed to be in control at that point in time, and maybe in a little freakish way, if need be, for that moment in time. It, after a while, begins to relax. It, after a while, feels satisfied that it has been addressed, that it has been listened to, that it has been understood with regards to wanting things to be in control, with regards to things wanting to be a little predictable. And when that's addressed, when that's taken care of first, it makes space for another part of me that is more playful, that can be more spontaneous, that can be a little unplanned and a little unorganized, or maybe even disorganized, that can let things go. During the course of this activity, we also see, and if we listen attentively, if we listen properly to the words that are being used, and probably even look at the body language, I'll also notice that there's a part of me that is very competitive, that doesn't like to lose, that likes to compare itself to others. And of course, I learned it from my external factors to keep comparing myself to others. I wasn't born this way, but I learned it through social interactions, especially during my earliest formative years, and which we all do. So there's this part of me that is very competitive, that doesn't like to lose, and thereby doesn't like to lose control as well. And in a way, to some degree, at that point in time, can get very dictatorial as well, can function like a predator as well, which is like my way or the highway, which also can say that I know better than any other person, and which is why it's got to be done my way, which is where I become a leader, and maybe not a healthy one at that point in time, but a little controlling and a dictatorial one as well. And in this activity, it may come across as being very playful, because we are kind of aware of what the activity is all about. But in very close, intimate relationships with friends and with families, with the inner circle, it may then not feel very pleasant to others, wherein it implicitly says, it's my way or the highway. And at that point in time, it can sound, it can come across as being very mean and very aggressive at times as well. The other thing I also noticed here was that when this was taken up as a teamwork, it kind of builds up connection also, which is very important for human beings, because when we start to collaborate and bring our brains together and our hearts together to create something new, we kind of connect in a better way, with a little more curiosity, with a little more openness, and an openness to taking other people's point of view as well, giving it a consideration, so that probably we have bigger perspectives, or more holistic perspectives with regards to things, with regards to arts, with regards to our life decisions, with regards to our healing, with regards to bonding as well, with regards to trusting, with regards to connection. So I think art in some way, or having art being taken up in that way, reveals a lot of our personal and interpersonal aspects, which is something that I think we all should reflect on, should take insights from. अरे अच्छा मेरा ब्रेन में टूल में निकल रहा है. So we tried making flowers here in a little structured way, and the controlling part of me that at times wishes to have things a little too in control is now feeling okay, is satisfied. So there are 2 flowers that have been taken into consideration, and we worked as a team over here. So that part of me is feeling good. Now please understand, I'm using a certain language which is called as, I'm using a part of me that works like a control freak. So there's a part of me that is feeling very satisfied that okay, things are in a structured format, I made a flower and I feel good about it, things were in my control. So that part of me is satisfied. Now there's another part of me that wishes to explore something that is a little more randomly done. And because this part of me is satisfied, I can go on to the other part to explore it and play it out with others here. Over here we are doing a teamwork, it's a collaborative thing, and the childlike aspect of me is also coming into the picture. So if you take care of the vocabulary and notice the vocabulary or the words that I'm using, it's part of me, childlike part of me, the grown-up part of me, the control freak part of me, the part of me that wishes to experience randomness, and we have all of these parts in us, and we need to satisfy all of these parts in healthier ways rather than suppressing it and then exhibiting it in our day-to-day life in unhealthy ways. So I'm okay now taking up the randomness of things, and let's see how that pans out. I'll share the experience of that as well. Over here I'd like to ask, is there anybody over here who was participating in the activity who has a control freak part of within themselves? किसी का ऐसा है जो कंट्रोल फ्रीक जैसा है, जो चीजें इन कंट्रोल रखना चाहता है?
I would like to share.
Yeah.
So I believe myself sometimes to be a little bit of a perfectionist.
Okay.
So for me, like before doing anything, like having anything done, I have this knack or this desire that everything should be in perfect order. Like if I were to start some business or something, I want everything like even the last nail should be right in the proper place before I can open shop to anyone. That because of that, I generally tend to become delayed for projects or delayed for certain things in life. Like I tend to delay things. Untimely, you can say indefinitely delay things to a point where it becomes almost painful, and I end up not making a profit in that venture, or I lose out the chances of making a profit in that venture. Whereas if I were to just start, because generally life doesn't go accordingly to your terms. Life will always throw curveballs at you. Sometimes something or the other will always become less or more. So because of which I feel that I should be more prepared to take things in its own accord rather than wanting to have it perfect all the time.
किसी और का any other thing that they noticed about themselves? किसी का controlling aspect है, किसी को चीजें perfectly करनी है. Anybody who felt that this activity is boring या खुद के बारे में कुछ reveal हुआ है तो please share.
मेरे को अच्छा लग रहा है, मतलब एक कुछ नया करते तो कर
रहे हैं, ओके, सुकून मिल रहा है,
हाँ।
ओके। इनसे मैं इंस्पायर हुई हूँ कि इन्होंने उधर पे ब्रांच और छोटा कुछ आउटकम्स बनाना शुरू किया है, तो मेरे भी उसमें होना चाहिए। कॉपी कैट वाला भी एक पार्ट है, या इट्स लाइक कि इनका मैं भी कॉपी करती हूँ, एंड आई एम ऑल्सो रिकॉग्नाइजिंग कि वो कॉपी कैट जो पार्ट है वो थोड़ा कॉम्पिटिटिव भी है, बिकॉज जैसे मैंने ये फर्स्ट वाला आई प्लेस्ड दिस, देयर वाज दिस पार्ट दैट वेंट उनसे अच्छा करना है, so there's a part of me that was like अच्छा उनसे इंस्पिरेशन मिला है, उनसे अच्छा भी करना है।
You just make it a little bit tough for you. 2 heads are better than 1. I'll support Noah in this.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Make it better for him also.
Then I want your help. उनसे बेटर करना है, okay, उनसे बेटर करना है, and I'm noticing that that part of me which is competitive can get dominating also. I am instructing somebody else कि उनसे बेटर करना है, और उनको जबरदस्ती अपनी टीम में भी खींच लिया है बिना उनकी कंसेंट के, या सो डोमिनेटिंग पीपल दूसरों की कंसेंट की वेट भी नहीं करते। सो वो वाला पार्ट जो मेरा है वो कभी कभी शायद कुछ कुछ एस्पेक्ट्स में वैसे प्ले आउट किया है, वेयरिंग it has not waited for my daughter's consent with regards to something and then has overpowered it, and quite naturally आप overpower वहीं पे कर सकते हो जहाँ पे आपको लगता है कि you are at a stronger position. Sorry, कलर क्यों? Okay, again instructing. किसी को अपने मन से नहीं करने देना, वो भी एक पार्ट रियलाइज हो रहा है मुझे कि सारे जैसे मत कर, when I said that it's like who am I to tell somebody else? मैं कौन होती हूँ उसको बताने वाली कि सारे एक जैसे कर या मत कर, वो अपनी मर्जी से अपने हिसाब से करे, but the competitive part of me, probably even the envious part of me is like नहीं, अपने हिसाब से मत कर, मुझे पता है ज्यादा अच्छा कैसे करते हैं। एंड टू सम डिग्री कभी कभी उसका जो वर्बल डिक्शनरी में आता है, लॉट ऑफ पीपल उसी चीज को दूसरे तरीके से बोलते हैं, विच इज मोर हर्टफुल, इज लाइक अपना दिमाग ज्यादा यूज मत करो। सो in a sense the implied thing what I did at that point in time just 2 seconds back was that कि रैंडम एक जैसे कलर में मत कर, अपना दिमाग ज्यादा मत यूज कर, मैं बता रही हूँ कि कैसे ठीक किया जाता है, आई नो बेटर। सो देयर आर पार्ट्स ऑफ अस दैट कम अप दैट रिवील देमसेल्व्स when we are into interactions with others, when we are into teamwork, or when we are trying internally to compete with somebody, they reveal themselves to us, and we need to be aware of those parts. क्योंकि उसको अगर चेक इन नहीं किया, and if we don't have insight about it, those parts bleed on to others and then they cause damage to others. Yay! I am happy. Okay, now I'm feeling better. So if you actually listen and not just hear, but actually listen to the content that was being played out, you would also notice that I've mentioned that there are parts of me that at times can behave like a control freak, that does not like being out of control, that does not like things happening in random manners, wherein there is lesser sense of predictability. You'll also notice that I mentioned that there's a part of me which, when it takes care of the control freak aspect of me, gives permission to the control freak aspect of me that it can be in charge, that it can be in control, that it is allowed to be in control at that point in time, and maybe in a little freakish way, if need be, for that moment in time. It after a while begins to relax. It after a while feels satisfied that it has been addressed, that it has been listened to, that it has been understood with regards to wanting things to be in control, with regards to things wanting to be a little predictable. And when that's addressed, when that's taken care of first, it makes space for another part of me that is more playful, that can be more spontaneous, that can be a little unplanned and a little unorganized, or maybe even disorganized, that can let things go. During the course of this activity, we also see, and if we listen attentively, if we listen properly to the words that are being used, and probably even look at the body language, I'll also notice that there's a part of me that is very competitive, that doesn't like to lose. that likes to compare itself to others. And of course, I learned it from my external factors to keep comparing myself to others. I wasn't born this way, but I learned it through social interactions, especially during my earliest formative years, and which we all do. So there's this part of me that is very competitive, that doesn't like to lose and thereby doesn't like to lose control as well. And in a way, to some degree, at that point in time, can get very dictatorial as well, can function like a predator as well, which is like my way or the highway, which also can say that I know better than any other person, and which is why it's got to be done my way, which is where I become a leader, and maybe not a healthy one at that point in time, but a little controlling and a dictatorial one as well. And in this activity, it may come across as being very playful because we are kind of aware of what the activity is all about. But in very close, intimate relationships with friends and with families, with the inner circle, it may then not feel very pleasant to others, wherein it implicitly says it's my way or the highway. And at that point in time, it can come across as being very mean and very aggressive at times as well. Now, this competitive part of me can also feel envious, not jealous, but envious, wherein I'm wanting my work to be better than somebody else, even when they had inspired me. Now, there's a difference between jealousy and feeling envious. Over here, I realized through this experience that I may not have, or to a large degree, I may not have the part of me that feels jealous, but there's definitely a part of me that feels envious. And once I'm aware of that, as a tool, I can use it, consciously use it to my advantage, knowing when it's arising, knowing when it's showing up, and even begin to question as to what value is it essentially talking about, directing me towards, which is where I want to outdo not only others, but even myself. Or I can let it unconsciously drag me for the rest of my life. And thereby, only when we can name them, whether it's jealousy or whether it's envy, can we become aware of them to be able to use it for our advantage as the information, as a reference point, rather than letting it remain in the unconscious, wherein it then becomes the dictator of our lives, of our fate as well. Because as Carl Jung had said, that whatever remains in the unconscious and is not brought to the conscious awareness is labeled as fate. Essentially, because whatever we do not have an idea about is not in our knowledge, and thereby is not within our understanding and our control, and thereby gets labeled as fate. And most of the times, as we all know today, for a larger chunk of our lives, we are operating from a subconscious and our unconscious, and thereby it gets labeled as fate. So, on the other sheet of paper, we are placing the pieces randomly. There is no order, there is no structure. We are picking up any piece and placing it anywhere. And because the control freak part of me has been addressed, this part of me is actually feeling pretty relaxed and playful to just place it anywhere. However, it's also not that focused, not that intentional, which is also what I'm realizing is happening. It's not that intentional, it's just picking up things haphazardly and putting it anywhere possible because there is no structure, there is no order to it. And it's not as attached and even competitive. It's not as attached to the artwork or whatever work that we are doing. And I think if we just stare it again, this part of me will be quite okay. So what at least I'm realizing about myself is that the part of me that likes to control things is also the part of me that gets attached and that feels the pain. That is a little less playful, but is more focused, is more intentional about things. So that part of me is a little more purposeful with regards to things. That part also likes to have control over its team and team members as well, and can become dictatorial at times, and does like its team member to have equal control over themselves, and that part of me also likes to have control over others and situations as well. So yeah, those were the things that came up for me. And like I said, this playful part of me, which is just haphazardly placing things here and there, is careless also, is least bothered also. It's just doing an activity for the heck of doing it. Of course, the intention of the bigger part is definitely, or of the wiser part is definitely, to see as to what all comes up when certain things or certain activities are taken up, because that helps us understand ourselves a little more better, gain more insights into our own selves a little better, both on the personal and within the social contexts as well. Over here, through the course of this activity, I also realized that it's our natural tendency as humans to get attached to things, attached to our own ideas, attached to our own beliefs, attached to our own identities, attached to our own labels, attached to our own social status, attached to our own wealth, attached to our own relationships and their patterns. And that naturally happens, as I at least realized through this activity, because whatever the drawing, the art form that I had created, did require investment of my brain, did require investment of my muscles, did require investment of my creativity, did require investment of my time, did require investment of my focus, did require investment of my attention to the bigger picture and to the details as well, did require me to stop everything else, to forget about everything else. When I was in that activity, doing that activity, participating in that activity, being engaged with that activity, because it felt meaningful, because it felt cathartic, because it had a purpose at that point in time. So quite naturally, when so much of investment with regards to so many things has gone into that, and I began to call it my own art form, my own creativity, my own thought process, my own expression, quite naturally, quite logically, I am bound to get attached to that. And when that's torn apart, when that's shredded to pieces, which is a metaphor for almost every other thing in life, with regards to our career, with regards to shifting places, with regards to shifting schools, with regards to shifting organizations, with regards to our personal relationships, with regards to changing our mindset, with regards to questioning our own beliefs, our own thoughts, and everything else that has informed it, quite naturally, it feels unpleasant. Quite naturally, it feels challenging. With regards to the identity that I think I've built around for myself, and to some degree, when there are other participants in the group who are also tearing down the same structures, who are also in the process of challenging and shredding down the same structures, it quite naturally feels unsupported. It quite naturally feels destructive. And yet, if things are not remodeled from something breaking down, from something being torn apart, to then it being given a new shape, and whatever doesn't change to a large degree, after a point in time, it starts to stagnate. And so yes, even when I consciously asked others to help me with tearing off the art form, or any other form that we have built in life, it still felt unpleasant. It still felt like an attack by a few people. And yet, as a team, when we came together to reshape it, to give it a different shape, to organize it a little differently, to be able to give it a new meaning, to be able to give it a new structure, to be able to look at it a little differently, it felt like a supportive teamwork. Of course, there was internal competition within me with regards to the teamwork as well. But yet, even during that competition, though a part of me wanted to dominate, though a part of me really wanted to take charge and control, there was a part of me that was also enjoying the collaborative aspect of us working together, of me learning from somebody else, of me being able to observe somebody else and get inspired from them, of me being able to actually appreciate, to be even inspired by them with whatever they were trying to construct anew, and to even objectively see that once the new piece was created, it was reassembled. There were parts of it that beautifully came together, they were reshaped, and yet it did not look the same, it did not feel the same. There were parts of it that looked a little disorganized, there were parts of it that had little cracks to them, and yet those parts could beautifully sit together with each other to be able to complete or make the entire picture, the bouquet of flowers that we were trying to make. And on the other hand, what I also realized was that when we took up the random art form, wherein those shredded pieces, colorful pieces, were just placed in a haphazard manner, in an unstructured manner, without any planning, without giving it a lot of thought and a lot of focus and attention to it, without getting into the details of it or even the bigger structure of it, there was a little less attachment. There was a little less possessiveness with regards to that art form and however it looked. Whether it was pleasing or whether it was unpleasing actually did not matter. And in a way, that art form did not matter as much. It did not hold that kind of a meaning and a value which the other art forms had held almost for all of us. Now, there were 3 people in the group who, not verbally, or at least just one of them had verbally shared that they like to have things perfectly done, that they are perfectionists. And in a way, to a large degree, how it also sabotages, how it also holds them back when they've got to take certain decisions or when they've got to make certain choices because of the background running narrative that if it doesn't happen perfectly, what happens? What would I feel? How will I judge myself and how will others judge me? And in a way that helps us reflect of the background narratives that run the course of our decisions and the course of our lives, both in our personal and within our interpersonal spaces, both with our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with others, on the personal and the professional fronts as well. It helps us reflect, it helps us understand, it helps us observe the parts of us that are present in almost all of us. The controlling parts, the playful parts, the spontaneous parts, the parts that like to plan, the parts that can become mean and the parts that are caring as well, the parts that can behave like a dictator and the parts that can be inspired by somebody else, the part that is envious, the part that feels jealous, the part that feels proud and the part that also feels ashamed at times, the part that can be aggressive, the parts that can be passive aggressive, and the parts that can be very laid back as well. And once we begin to reflect through these activities, through journaling, we begin to see parts of ourselves that makes us both complex and interesting. And when we talk about self-love, in my understanding, it's about acknowledging, it's about appreciating, it's about making space for all of those parts, to then be able to integrate all of those parts in our own self to be able to feel whole and complete. Because if we reject any of those parts, we are actually rejecting a part of ourselves. We are not integrating that part of ourselves, in a way implying that we are ashamed of that part of ourselves. And whenever shame is running the story for us, we unknowingly are being dragged by it, rather than being the narrator of our own stories, the conscious narrator of our own stories. And whatever we feel ashamed of, we can never love that. So if we want to love ourselves completely and wholly, we need to holistically integrate all of these parts within ourselves, to be able to make space for all of these parts, because they all come with their pros and cons. And not being able to do that is disregarding our own experience. And quite naturally, when we disregard our own experience, we cannot expect somebody else to give it the due consideration that we actually would like to have for ourselves. So let's try and think about those aspects. Let's try and take up these kind of activities that helps us mindfully reflect on all of the experiences, on all of the feelings, on all of the thoughts, on all of the parts of us that arise at that point in time, to be able to acknowledge them, to be able to document them, to be able to connect with them. Let's try and do that for ourselves, and I will see you once again the next week. Till then, stay tuned in. And guys, if you do like the contextual content of these videos, please do like, share, and subscribe.